Canada needs to step up and re-engage with the United Nations and the multilateral diplomacy it rests on, according to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And the man charged with putting that into motion is newly appointed ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations, Marc-André Blanchard. And he joins us now. Ambassador, it's good to meet you.
Nice meeting you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming in today. It's fortuitous that we managed to get you out of New York and up here to Toronto, so that's great. Let's just by way of background put some of this on the record first, and then we'll start with our interview. So, Sheldon, if you would, let's bring this information up. Canada, of course, no stranger to the United Nations, led the campaign to ban landmines, helped establish the International Criminal Court, the responsibility to protect doctrine, and more recently funded maternal health initiatives. In 2010, however, Canada lost its bid to sit at the Security Council for 2 years to Portugal. That loss coming after 6 successful campaigns, Canada's last term being 1999 to 2000. Now, that loss had been attributed at the time to the previous Harper government's staunch support of Israel, perceived indifference to Southeast Asia, reduction in aid to Africa, inaction in creating a carbon market favored by small island nations fearing climate change. Prime Minister Trudeau has announced his intention to bid again for a seat in the year 2021. And we should add that Canada is currently the 10th largest contributor to the UN's regular budget, handing over $72 million US, 2016 dollars. That's about 3% of the entire United Nations budget. Okay, Ambassador, let's get into this. You have said that Canada's new approach will be one of multinational diplomacy. And I wonder just off the top, how does that differ from the way we did things in the past?
Well, we've seen it. It's Prime Minister Trudeau has been saying since his election last fall that he's committed to multilateralism. And what are the first gestures he's posed? Canada was instrumental in actually getting to an agreement in Paris for the COP21 agreement on climate change. Canada has been welcoming and generously hosting and welcoming 25,000 Syrian refugees in the last few months. And Canada has been invited back to a lot of tables. Just think about the French-led initiative recently about the peace between Palestine and Israel, where Canada has been asked to be back to the table, or on the Syrian situation, where countries have been asked in Geneva to come together and find solutions to this very sad situation in Syria. And Canada has been invited to that table as well. So those are all signs of Canada is back in multilateralism, and there's a strong commitment by the Prime Minister.
You know, members of the previous government, the Harper government, hate it when they hear the expression Canada's back, because it suggests to them that somehow they weren't there before. Do you think that's a fair criticism of the Harper government?
Listen, I respect what some of the work that has been done by the past government, and I'm now the Canadian representative to the United Nations. What I can say is that actually, by the welcoming I've been having at the UN, Canada, the international community is very happy to see Canada believing in being back and believing in multilateralism. And they had thought that it was also always part of our values, the attachment to the UN, to the promotion of the United Nations charters. And for some reason, the international community had a feeling that it was not maybe the first priority of the last government.
Well, let's give an example here. When Prime Minister Harper met with Vladimir Putin on stage at an international event, he said, well, I guess I'll shake your hand, but you got to get the hell out of Ukraine. Now, that doesn't sound like something Justin Trudeau would say to Vladimir Putin, and I guess we'll find out which approach works better years from now. But what's your sense of things?
There's a strong belief the moment that actually we should engage in discussion with, and sometimes with countries where we don't agree with them. Engagement doesn't mean agreement with the countries. It means, let's discuss, let's find some political solution to some of the problems we have, and let's try to get around the table and make sure that we try to find a political solution rather than going military quickly or in other forums.
Can you imagine a problem in the world today where, based on your conversations with the Prime Minister of the country, you think there is a military solution that Canada ought to engage in now?
Well, the peace operation, Canada has said clearly that they want to re-engage in peace operations. Peace operations mean a different thing than, for example, they meant 20 years ago or 25 years ago or 40 years ago when we first engaged in the 1960s. 1950s under the leadership of Pearson, for example. The current government has said that they will re-engage in peace operation. We've been in recent years, for example, we've been the 9th contributor in financial resources to the peace operations of the UN. So we've had a significant role during the last government, and now we are continuing. But the current government has said that they will enhance Canada's participation. One of the ways where we, for example, we are now doing a defense policy review of our involvement in the world on the defense point of view from a Canadian perspective, and the Minister of Defense is currently leading this review. There's an aspect of it that will touch the peace operations and our role, Canada's role within the peace operations. And what is being asked from us in a big ways is, at the moment there are between 75 and 85 policemen and policewomen that are deployed in some of the UN's operation. They want more policemen. They want more policewomen. They also appreciate the fact that our forces can actually speak both in English and in French. They want more rapid and strategic deployment in and out of countries. They want more assistance with setting up some medical facilities in peace operation. At the moment, there are 16 conflicts where the UN forces are involved. There are 105,000 forces deployed by the UN around the world. And that's a massive operation. And you can imagine that Canadian expertise, the military expertise, the police expertise, all sorts of civilian expertise that we have is being contemplated in many of those situations.
I don't want to take anything away from you, but probably our most famous ambassador to the United Nations was Lester Pearson.
Of course.
Okay, so we're on the same page on that one.
We're on the same page.
A bit of a touchy-feely question, but when you get into that chamber of the General Assembly and you sit in that chair that was Lester Pearson's chair, what kind of responsibilities do you feel?
Well, there's a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of responsibility to be Canada's representative at the UN. And it's actually, one of the things that I've realized since I've been there. I've met with at least 60 of my peers, the other ambassadors, one-on-one for discussions between us. And, a lot is expected from Canada. And so that's the first thing you realize, that the world needs more Canada. And our values, what we believe in, the positive narration of multiculturalism, the peaceful, how we live peacefully and successfully together in Canada. There's a lot expected from Canada, but also there's a lot that Canada can do. There's a significant, so that's the second part, there's a significant contribution that Canada can do. And sometimes we forget it in Canada. We are a significant force in the world. We have, because of our history, because of our culture, because of who we are, because of how we live, because of our values, we have a lot to bring to the table. And that's what actually, as the Canadian ambassador, my main objective is actually that I facilitate this and I coordinate our efforts at the United Nations to make sure that we bring that to the table.
Fair enough, but all indications are we want to spend a lot less on military/defense/peacekeeping in the years ahead. And I wonder how we do all of that. The world needs more Canada, while at the same time try to cut back on our expenditures.
Well, for example, there are ways, peace operations. At the moment at the United Nations, everybody agrees we pay $8 billion a year on peace operations, mostly on the military side of the operations. Very few millions, like a fraction of it, is spent, less than 200 million, if my memory serves me well, is spent on peace prevention. And so everybody agrees that we need to spend way more on prevention. And that's where Canada brings a lot of value. Bring a lot of value on mediation of conflict, on making sure that countries, solidify their implementation of the rule of law, that actually the civil institutions in different countries get stronger. Because, to have peace in a country, you need 3 pillars really to be there. You need, obviously, the security, you need the institutions, the rule of law, the human rights, That's the second pillar, and you need the development side, personally in Africa, when we're talking about African countries. You need to work on these three pillars of the UN at the same time to make sure, and that's how peace is more sustained, is more solid. And that's the side of peace operation that we will be working on as a country. And that's a side that, you know, doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money. It's a lot about expertise. And we can make a lot of difference with Canadian expertise.
I wonder if we're going to make a difference in the area of, I think, one of the most scandalous parts of the United Nations background right now, which is the sex abuse scandals. Nearly 100 allegations of sexual abuse against the United Nations in the past year. This is on the rise. What can Canada do about that?
We've done a lot so far. We have pushed very hard, vociferously, for the zero tolerance and the implementation of the zero tolerance policy in the UN. We are actually lending a very senior person to the office of the coordinator responsible for that, the implementation of that policy at the UN. And this is the kind of leadership that Canada is doing at the moment. And this is unacceptable. And there are many, many, many countries that are member states of the United Nations who agree, who share the same point of view, and are making sure that, because we cannot have those allegations at the same time as the deployment of these peace operations.
But I guess the problem is everybody there has diplomatic immunity, so they all feel they can get away with anything.
Well, it is. It's a multifaceted problem, and this is a problem where you need to work a lot. There are multifaceted approach to make sure that the zero tolerance is implemented, and it's a question of education, training, rule of law, accountability. Many things enter into this equation.
We mentioned earlier in the interview that Canada is going to be bidding for a seat on the Security Council in 2021. The last time, apparently, we won, it cost us $10 million in lobbying and giving away a lot of free tickets to see Cirque du Soleil. What do we have to do this time to win?
You know, it's in some ways, it's being Canada, being who we are, and making sure that we communicate it properly, making sure that we're engaged in multilateralism. You know, it's a lot about showing that, you know, Canada's leadership, Canada's cultures, Canada's values. Why does it matter to be on the part of the Security Council? Why should Canadians who listen to us tonight, why they're saying, why should it matter? It matters because, well, the first part is, you know, Canadians care about climate change. We care about migration. We care about the institutions, the rule of law. We care about women's rights. We care about development. We care, obviously, about security. And those are all issues that are at the forefront in the Security Council. The Security Council of the United Nations is one can actually authorize the use of force. So Canadians care about that. So that's one thing. The second part where I say, you know, why should we spend resources to gain that seat? It's actually Canada the world needs Canada, and Canada wants to be a relevant contributor to the world, wants to be a relevant country in the world. And why? Because I come from the private sector. It is actually very important for Canadians, for opportunities abroad, to attract investment in Canada as well, for Canadians who are seeking opportunities abroad and in Canada, that actually our country be seen and perceived as one of the relevant forces in the world. And that's why it matters to Canadians.
I'm sure, though, even when you were in the private sector, you heard bad things about the United Nations, and now you're in a position where you have to either do something about it or defend it. And I want to read you an excerpt here. This is from Anthony Banbury, who wrote in the New York Times about this. He's a 30-year UN veteran. He wrote a piece called "I Love the UN, but It Is Failing." And here's what he said. "I was unprepared for the blur of Orwellian admonitions and Carolian logic that govern the place. If you locked a team of evil geniuses in a laboratory, they could not design a bureaucracy so maddeningly complex, requiring so much effort, but in the end incapable of delivering the intended result. The system is a black hole into which disappear countless tax dollars and human aspirations never to be seen again." Now, I know you've only been there for a few months, so maybe your experience is not like his yet. But you know this is out there. You know that impression of the place exists. What can you do about it?
it is a complex bureaucracy. It is Canada is actually arguing for a more accountable, more efficient United Nations Secretariat. We are not denying that there are issues with the United Nations and with the bureaucracy, but the United Nations is the only place where the 193 countries of the world go together and are convened together and discuss together and try to find solutions to real issues. Like, there's not one single, there's not a single problem. Like, what are the major issues we're facing? It's migration. It's some security issues. It's the climate change. These three biggest challenges that we're facing are none of them can be resolved on a bilateral discussion between Mr. Trudeau and anybody. Yeah. You need to bring all of the parties around to the table with all of their different cultures and interests. And that is difficult. That is difficult, and that is not always the most efficient way to do things. But the United Nations is the only place we have. We have to make it better. We are determined to make it better. Canada is very active in asking for more efficiency and more accountability. One of the first things I've done since I've been the ambassador to the United Nations is contribute very positively. For the first time, the member states were asked to ask questions. They were allowed to ask questions to the candidate to become Secretary General. And it was one of the very first things that I've done is actually be present at almost each and every one of the sessions of the candidates with the member states and asking them direct questions about how they would do things, how they would transform, how they would fight the silos that are within the United Nations to make sure that actually, two things, that Canada, by asking and being actively and proactively participating to the process, was giving credibility to the process, because the first time that it's not done, just the members of the Security Council alone. So it was give credibility to a reform of the UN that was, albeit small, but give credibility to that new reform that was done. And the second, make sure that weaker candidates that actually in front of everyone could not answer some questions or were disappointing in their, in the way they were presenting, it would be tougher for the members of the Security Council to appoint them or suggest them as candidate. And I think, it's been a success so far. We're going to see who will be appointed by the Security Council. It's a proposal that comes from the 15 members of the Security Council, to a unanimous one. So the 5 permanent members of the Security Council have a veto over that suggestion, and it's proposed to the member states for ratification. We're going to do that sometimes in the fall. But already, everybody, a lot of people, a lot of countries agree that it should be someone who can actually make sure that the UN is more accountable, more efficient, and that actually, could make sure that we have a very important agenda, the Agenda 2030. The 193 countries agree last fall on 17 goals to be achieved by 2030. This is a very ambitious agenda, but it's an agenda that was designed by all of the member states together. They got together, they agreed on it, and 17 goals. And so now we need a very efficient United Nations bureaucracy and machine to make sure that it gets implemented. And the new Secretary General's task, one of his first objectives will be that. And we'll see who will be appointed, but there are very strong candidates that are in the running.
I want to pick up on one word that you just used in that answer. You said whoever will be his selection, and I don't know if it will be a his. Is it time for the UN to have a female Secretary General, which it has never had?
I can tell you there are 5 women candidates out of the 11, and out of the 5, quite a few of them can be appointed Secretary General.
Have you got a favorite?
We don't have a favorite. We have a few favorites, and amongst them, many women.
Let's finish up on this here. This is from Derek Burney and Fen Hampson, who's the Director of Global Security and Politics at CG. And they wrote recently, the track record of the United Nations and many of its agencies is checkered at best. The UN Commission on Human Rights issued a withering report on violations by North Korea, but there were no repercussions. Russia, a permanent member of the Security Council, violated the most basic principle of the UN by seizing Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine, but the UN simply turned a blind eye. Despite a sporadic consensus on Syria, the violence persists. The massive flight of refugees has overwhelmed UN agencies and threatens the fabric of Europe. The UN may not yet be nearing the fate of its League of Nations predecessor, but life support of some kind would be in order. Do you think things are as bleak as they suggest?
I prefer to see the glass half full than glass empty, half empty myself. I believe that there are some big challenges in the UN. And the UN has been efficient in some and inefficient in some other areas. And the Syrian situation, for example, it's a disappointment of the UN, but there are reasons for it. And there's been misalignment of some two superpowers at the Security Council in particular, who disagreed on the approach there. And when that happens, it makes it very tough for a resolution or for solutions. On the other hand, the UN has been successful in some areas, like I'll give you an example, Ebola. Some criticism has been made about how long it took for the UN to react. But once it reacted, it avoided very, very pessimistic prognostics about the Ebola situation in Western Africa. And the UN worked very closely with the countries involved, and you know what? We defeated this what could have been catastrophic.
Could have been potentially horrendous.
And so the UN is not perfect. It doesn't work as well in some situations, some of the ones you've mentioned, but it works in many others. And it's an institution. It's made by human beings, coming from various culture, various background, different values, and it is not, obviously, it presents some unique challenges.
So finish this sentence then for our last question. My time as UN ambassador from Canada will be considered a success if what?
Well, for me, the biggest challenge faced by the world is the migration issue at the moment. So it's if Canada has helped the world coping with this challenge of demography, the migration, and of being able to live together from different cultures. Like this is where Canada can make a difference. It's on pluralism, on multiculturalism. You would be surprised what I hear sometimes from some of my peers at the UN who have no experience or very little experience with immigration, no experience or very little experience with refugees or living together with different cultures. So as an ambassador, I would like to bring this to the table. As Canadian, we ought to bring this to the table and making sure that we can contribute to the world's thinking about how can we live better together? How can we make sure that this big challenge of migration, 60 million people are currently displaced. Of those 60 million at the moment, 20 million are refugees. And this is this is a huge challenge. It's probably the biggest migration challenge that we've faced. And this Canada can bring some elements to an important contribution to the solution of that challenge. And that's what I will hope to be doing.
You're at the beginning of a 5-year term, or at the pleasure of the Prime Minister, as they say, and I hope before your term is out, you will come back and visit us and let us know how you're doing.
For sure. Thank you very much. It will be a pleasure.
Bonne chance, monsieur.
Merci. Thank you.
That's Canada's Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the United Nations, Marc-André Blanchard.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.